All right, let's take a trip back in time. But we're not heading to some dark, dreary era. No, we're going somewhere full of incredible, dazzling light, an age of innovation that literally laid the groundwork for the world we live in today. Let's get into it. So, here's a question that kind of flips what you might have learned in history class. While Europe was going through its so called Dark Ages, where was the sun of science shining? Well, the answer is the Islamic Golden Age. And believe me, its story is one of humanity's greatest intellectual adventures, for sure. Okay, so what was this Golden Age really? Let's be clear, this wasn't just some brief flash of brilliance. We're talking about a long, sustained period of scientific and cultural flourishing that totally changed how we see the universe. And get this, we're not talking about a single city or some small kingdom. This was a whole civilization of knowledge. Think of it like an interconnected network of thinkers, libraries, and universities that stretched all the way from Spain to India for over 600 years. That's a massive scale. So, you gotta wonder, how does something this huge even get started? I mean, it doesn't just happen by accident, right? It all began with a very specific vision, a deliberate state policy that valued knowledge above pretty much everything else. Check out this quote. "The ink of a scholar is more sacred than the blood of a martyr." Wow. And that wasn't just some nice-sounding poetic phrase. For the Abbasid rulers who came to power back in the 8th century, this was basically their mission statement. They decided their empire's legacy wouldn't be built on conquest alone, but on the power of the mind. And the beating heart of this whole vision? It was a place in Baghdad called the Bayt al-Hikma, the House of Wisdom. Now, don't picture some dusty old library. No way. This was the Silicon Valley of its time, a massive campus where the world's brightest minds came together to collaborate, debate, and, well, invent the future. So, what was the engine driving this place? It was something called the translation movement. And the strategy was simple but absolutely revolutionary. Step 1. Gather all the important knowledge of humanity, from Greek philosophy to Indian mathematics. Step 2, translate all of it into one common language, Arabic. What this did was create, in effect, the world's first intellectual internet. A scholar in Spain could now read and build upon the work of someone in Persia. Just incredible. And if you want to know just how much they valued this project, get this. Translators were sometimes paid in gold, equal to the weight of the books they translated. Can you even imagine that? Your work being literally worth its weight in gold? This huge investment created an environment where being a scholar wasn't just respected, it was one of the most important and frankly lucrative jobs you could have. Okay, so when you pour that much resource and respect into knowledge, what happens? You get some of the greatest minds in history. And these weren't just quiet academics. They were scientific superstars who completely changed the game in their fields. Let's kick things off with a name you might not recognize, al-Khwarizmi, but I guarantee you use his work every single day. In fact, two of the most fundamental words in all of math and technology, they come directly from him. See, al-Khwarizmi didn't just solve a couple of problems. He built an entire system for solving them. His book, Algebra, gave us, well, algebra. His own name, when it was Latinized, gave us the word algorithm. And on top of all that, he was a huge champion for using Indian numerals, including that revolutionary concept of zero, which made all modern math possible. Just pause and think about that for a second. Every single time you scroll through social media or use a map app or play a game on your phone, you are using algorithms, a system of logic built on the foundations al-Khwarizmi laid out way back in 9th century Baghdad. It's mind-blowing. All right, next up, we've got Ibn al-Haytham, and this guy was a true revolutionary. For over 1,000 years, basically everyone, from the ancient Greeks on, believed that we see because our eyes shoot out these invisible rays. And he was the one who dared to ask, "Are we sure about that?" And he didn't just question it, he proved it was wrong. He did it through these brilliant experiments, showing that light actually reflects off objects and then enters our eyes. He even built the first camera obscura, which is the granddaddy of every camera ever made. But you know what his greatest contribution might have been? The method he used. You form a hypothesis, you run an experiment, and you document the proof. Yeah, that's his real legacy, the scientific method, the very process of scientific inquiry that you learn in a school lab, that whole idea of testing a theory instead of just believing what some old authority figure said, that was systemized by Ibn al-Haytham. He changed science from, well, because Aristotle said so, to, okay, let's actually test it and see for ourselves. But all this knowledge wasn't just locked away in books. The Golden Age was amazing at applying science to solve real-world problems, creating technologies and institutions that were honestly centuries ahead of their time. Just take a look at their hospitals. They were called bin Maristans, and they were shockingly modern. I mean, they weren't just places for sick people. They were these comprehensive medical centers with specialized wards, on-site pharmacies, and even medical schools. They even practice a form of holistic care, using music and the sound of running water to soothe patients. These are concepts we're only now really rediscovering in modern medicine. And all this knowledge wasn't stuck in one place. It traveled. The journey of the great explorer Ibn Battuta is the perfect example of this. Over 29 years, he traveled all across the known Islamic world and never really left its interconnected network of trade, culture, and scholarship. It was a truly globalized civilization. But like all great eras, this one did eventually come to an end. The thing is, its ideas didn't die. They were passed on, and they directly helped spark the next great intellectual awakening in human history. 1258, just that single date. It's often pointed to as the symbolic end of the Golden Age. So why? Because in 1258, the Mongol invasion reached Baghdad. The city was destroyed, and the House of Wisdom, with all its countless books, was lost. It was an absolute catastrophe. But here's the thing. You can burn a library, but you can't burn an idea. The seeds of knowledge from the Golden Age had already been planted all over the place, especially in Europe. And we can still see that legacy today in the very language of science. Words like algebra, algorithm, chemistry, alcohol, they all have Arabic origins. They're like these little linguistic fossils, proving that the knowledge from a golden age was absorbed into Europe and became the foundation for the Renaissance and the scientific revolution that followed. So after all of this, what's the ultimate takeaway? What's the big idea here? Well, the greatest contribution of the Islamic Golden Age probably wasn't a specific invention or a single formula. It was a mindset. It was the courage to question thousand-year-old beliefs, the drive to test everything, and the core belief that the universe was something we could actually understand. The scholars of the Golden Age built their entire world on asking questions, and they proved that a single, daring question can change absolutely everything. So, as we wrap up our journey here, the real question I have for you is, what will be yours?